All right, welcome to this week's episode of Agile for Humans. I'm your host, Ryan Ripley. Joining me tonight, two past co-workers. We've got Joel Karr and Richie Peters. Joel and Richie, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. How about yourself, Ryan?
I'm happy. I'm good. It's good to see you guys. Joel, you doing okay?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, we've been talking about doing something like this for so long. I'm excited.
So I'm pretty pumped to have Joel and Richie here. Joel is I would say, a leader in the tech industry, especially in the Midwest. Excellent vice president type of strategical thinker that's been working throughout large and small companies for a while. Really actually worked for him for a while. Actually enjoyed Joel's leadership, and I have a few questions around that for him. Was peers with Richie for a while, so we held some director level positions together and got to try to work on some software. Richie basically held down the fort while I was off speaking all over the country and taking way too much vacation time. So Richie held down the fort while I was globe-trotting. But I did show up occasionally. We did a little work together, but no, it was a good time. But I've always wanted to kind of get Joel on the spot here, and I hope he doesn't mind. He's got this, I really liked this idea of leadership where you really tried to make it easy for people to do the right thing. Like, I really appreciated that about your leadership style. Like, you really try to make it super simple to just do the right thing at all times. Can you talk a little bit about that, Joel? Just the kind of ideas that you have behind that? Because it really stood out when I was working for you.
Yeah, I think any team that you're working with, there was a lot of why do we have to do this? And it even reminded back, Richie and I used to work together at restaurant.com when we were both software engineers. And what stuck with me was when we first did Post-it notes. And it's like, why are we doing all this work? We didn't understand it. And, and it was because we started with what the ask was and not, it's going to be harder if you don't do it, the way of the process, follow the process. So after many, many years, I think what I came up with is it's like a stream where the water's flowing. And as a leader, the goal is to put big rocks or boulders so that the water, the natural path, the easy path is flowing, the way you want it down the stream. So really try to focus on what are appropriate boulders. So things like you're not allowed to start writing code until you've finished your architecture review. It's too easy for a developer to sit down and start writing code without thinking through everything. So, an example of a boulder was the entire team has to sign off on the architecture diagram before you start writing code. And really those sort of things, I think every team's a little different, but that's been the goal at least.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those practices really highlights this idea of the whole team understanding what we're trying to do before we go and do it, right? Not having like one or two people. I always, and maybe it's good Todd's not here tonight because he hears this out of me all the time. I always talk about the 90s Chicago Bulls, right? And how Phil Jackson had to make it easy for a team of superstars to be successful. And it's one of those where if they didn't all know what was going on, if they didn't understand their role, the play they were going to run, how they needed to execute, if all that stuff wasn't lined up, that group of people cannot play well together, right? I mean, it would have been just a disaster. And so, Joel, some of the things you're talking about, like, do we understand the architecture? Like, do we know, are we building it intentionally? How many times have you guys seen an architecture? I think emergence is great once we understand what we want to do initially, though, right? Because how many times have you seen people just go off and suddenly we have a monolith when we wanted microservices, as an example, right?
Yeah, I think, that's a great point because even the terms, and we spent a lot of time on making sure that when someone says API, everyone can see what they're talking about. And so one of kind of the cliche things became, don't use your eyes when you want to see the code. And at first, I think I said it, and Richie, you probably remember, but when I said it, I didn't even think I was saying a tagline. But what I really meant is you shouldn't have to read someone else's code to understand what they're doing. That if you're on the same team, you should understand that an API is structured a certain way, all the little minor things like you call it object or model or, all those things that a team works through. If you can see the code without reading your teammates' code, like that's when you're doing well, I think.
So that's an interesting perspective because I took, when I remember you saying that and how I took it a little bit of a different direction. I took it more as you want to do all the thinking and think through the problem before starting to work on it. So in that regard, right, like I'm visualizing the code, what I want to do, and like how it's all going to come together before I actually start coding.
Yeah, Ryan and I had so many talks about, I think I said, the speed at which you type should be the thing that's slowing you down. And I remember, and it was kind of an extreme statement, but what I was really trying to get to is you've already thought through everything. So then you're just executing on what you've already thought through and what your team's already discussed.
Yeah, and to a lot of people out there, this will be a surprising discussion. Like, I'm not against big. So I'm against big upfront design. I don't think we can know every single aspect up front, but I think we can sit down and use some brain power. And Joel's actually brought me around on this after hitting my head against a wall a few times trying to argue it. I think you do have to sit down and actually, as a team, decide, like, how do we implement APIs? How do we implement microservices? What do those look like? Because to Joel's point, everyone should be able to sit down and understand what we're trying to do without having to get into the nitty gritty of every detail. If I write something one way and Richie writes it another and Joel picks a third way, we've just created a disaster and a monstrosity to try to support, right? And so I think those kind of team standards, those coding standards, those team agreements, super helpful. We try to know as much as we can up front. We kind of work together to get that built. I still think we're going to get surprised. And I think that was always a spot that we kind of got stuck in our conversations, but hopefully I think I might have brought you around on some of that a surprise is actually okay sometimes, right? What if we learn something and we pivot, we adjust? But yeah, I think this planning is important. And it kind of pushed me down the field a little bit too, where the surprise should come from the user, not from the code. The user could use the feature we created in a way we never expected, and now suddenly we need to adjust. But that's not a coding mistake. That's a UX UI thing. That's an off-label use that we didn't expect. I mean, those kind of surprises I think are always going to happen, right?
Yeah, and I think you pulled me in that direction a bit too, where now I think of things as like what is known and what's unknown. Yeah. Like a dev team should know how long it will take them to build a CRUD API that they've done, 17 different times. But it might be here's a new API we've never worked with. We're not sure when we'll get credentials to even access API, all those sort of things. So I try to get people to tag it as unknown. So then when they get to the end, they can say, were the things that we thought were reasonable to know, yeah, were they, did they work out the way we thought they were? And then let's look in the other bucket of like, here's the things that we thought might surprise us.
Yeah. And what's funny, all I'm hearing in that language is we're going to have a retrospective and talk about what happened. Right. I mean, even though there were so many like battles about, Scrum it's like the practices still line up. And it's funny to me that, yeah, we're going to sit down and look at how things went. Did we actually understand the things we thought we understand? And if we don't, how do we fix that? And yeah, so I mean, it was definitely a lot of fun battling through some of these projects, not him and I battling through solving complex problems and learning some of this weirdness along the way. It was a good adventure there. What did you think about it, Richie?
I share the same. I have some little twists here that I want to throw at you guys. So I guess one of the things that, that I'm starting to learn as I, transition more into leadership roles, right? And, coming from that engineering background is, you can't be 100% certain when something's going to get done, right? So Joel, I think you mentioned, I know what you're saying. How long should it take someone to write an API that, we've written X amount of times before? And I don't think it's the fact that writing that API is actually going to take more time or less time. It's the uncertainty that comes with the other work that might come up, right? So, for instance, like a prod outage could take you back a couple of days. We've been in those cases. So I think, it just becomes better. From my sense, I think it's more of like, how do you, I don't know if manage is the right word, or what's the cool words we use these days, Ryan, for like managing uncertainty? What would you call that?
I
think we just call it Scrum.
Scrum. Okay.
The thing I've been on lately is can you measure it? Because I think most, I won't say all, but most folks are reasonable when you have a valid reason why something took longer, right? So if you're able to say, hey, we thought that this would be done the first week in April, but we had more prod outages than we've ever had. Here's the numbers, right? And it set us back a week. Like that's a narrative that I think people want to help you through. But if you just say, hey, the last 3 times we thought it was going to take this long and we were wrong, because you have to guess.
Yep. For sure.
I think it's about building that narrative, right? And getting other people involved. Like I've tried to get business folks involved on building that narrative around why does something take longer? Because when someone outside of tech says it, it always sounds, better too.
Well, it's one of those where, of course, I totally agree. It's one of I remember early on a boss someone I was working for. He basically said, "Look, I'm never going to fire you for being wrong. Like we're human beings. We're going to be wrong. Like it's part of the deal, right? None of us are omnipotent. None of us are all knowing. We're going to screw things up. But if you ever blindside me, if you ever surprise me, if you ever withhold information, I will show you the door so fast your head will spin, right?" And that was that stuck with me. Like that talk, I think that happened about 20 years ago. I think it is about 20 years. And I'll never forget sitting in that office with him because I did something that surprised him. I thought I could fix something quickly. It went on for 2 weeks. And then finally some other VP called him and everything broke loose. It was a huge issue. And I learned and I think this is kind of what Joel's talking about too. It's, look, if you just say, hey, something surprised us here, or we've had a lot of outages, but if you communicate that early and often, suddenly people aren't mad. But when you blindside them in a sprint review and you haven't told the executive what's going on, I mean, they're just ready to take your head off.
Yeah. And there's certain things that are uncomfortable, right? Like thinking through complex problems is uncomfortable for people. And thinking through like that, retrospectives, I guess, even if you're doing them in the middle, are uncomfortable, I think, by nature. So when you ask a developer, why is this taking longer? I think often it's human nature to get defensive.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And changing that culture to be, hey, I'm trying to build a narrative. You help me and I can help you. That takes a long time to build that trust. But once you get there, I think it's really helpful.
I just remember, leading some teams in the financial industry, which is very unforgiving for dates, right? I mean, it truly is. And working at, and this is not the financial company we worked at. This is a different one. This is one earlier on. But I mean, really trying to partner with the teams and just say, look, if we're wrong, we're wrong. I'm never going to use that against you. That is such an uphill battle, right? And you can't screw that up. The first time you bring it up in a performance review, the trust is over. Like they're just not going to believe it. And so, yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Like getting them, when you're working with these developers, how do you get it to where the defenses just don't go up? When you ask that question, it's a tricky one, right?
Yeah, Richie, you were kind of front lines. Like this is your area. What do you think?
I think that just comes over with time, right? You gotta anyone first starting out, right, and getting and forget about just even the retrospective, right? Even doing like a peer code review or pairing with someone, for instance, right? Like you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, basically, and you have to have that open mindset and realize that as a team or an organization, right, we're in this together. We all want the same thing, and we're trying to make each other better, right? So obviously, you get bad seeds here and there that complain or will just rip on you for your code or whatnot. But like the true leaders, I'd say that the good mentors that I had throughout my career, were the ones who were like, oh yeah, no, this is fine. You could do it this way, right? But let me show you this other way, right? And it was never presented that this way or their way was better. It was more like different and always with trade-offs. And I think that's a key thing too, is call it pros and cons or trade-offs, but everything has trade-offs. Any decision you make, any way you do a certain code, right? Like even monolith, right? Like if someone's right now, I think monolith is like a no word, right? I think people are all so microservice and they're like, no, you can't do a monolith, right? Well, you can, right? Like if you're a small company starting out and you're like a one-man engineering team or a one-woman engineering team, you definitely would start out monolith, right? It would make your life less complex. Things are all, everything's in one repo even maybe, and your deployments are easier and whatnot, right? And as you grow, you can evolve into the more complex distributed systems. But Yeah, no, I think part of that just comes with maturity, right? As an engineer.
Richie, you're talking about technical excellence, which is where companies really have to invest, right? So the automated deploys, the automated builds, not having it take literally a miracle from high above for a deployment to actually work. I mean, those are things that as leaders we have to jump on and make sure that, like, it's like Joel's saying, the boulders get pushed out of the way and the water flows naturally.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the gig. Something else though, and I know Richie, I don't know if I can show this. So this is an experiment for everyone out there. We're going to see if this will work. I'm going to try to show some of the things that we've been thinking about, because I never used to think that predictability was a thing. And I know it's going to surprise people, but I actually think it's possible. And so Richie and I have been playing around with some ideas here too. And I think from a leadership perspective, this is kind of interesting because I don't think we have to guess and put so much pressure on the devs anymore. Like I've become a huge fan, and I'm going to try to explain what this is. It's basically Monte Carlo simulation based off of some cycle time, and actually this is off of throughput. And so teams measuring data can actually run some trials against their normal throughput. You can actually run 1 million trials. And if someone were to ask you, how long until 10 items are complete in your product backlog, you could actually, if you're starting on the 8th, you can start having that conversation around April 10th with an 84 to 86% confidence interval. Now, this to me is fascinating. And this is based off of the work of Daniel Vacanti in his book, When Will It Be Done? And this is his tool, Actionable Agile. This is a twig simulation, but it's something that has really captured my imagination only because when you actually do these lean metrics, I actually think it's possible to stop worrying so much about when, and the people can actually focus back on the how. And the easier we make things to deploy, to develop, to Joel's point, the more thinking we can kind of take off the plate of the devs, this gets better. And we're not so concerned about a lot of the normal questions that come up. I know, Richie, you've sat through a class or two on this with us already. Joel, I mean, this kind of simulation and prediction, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? I've always wanted to ask you about this stuff.
So my first time I've ever seen this, so this is great. Live on air. So the first thing I thought of was, people have tried to do that, like, now, next, future. And they say things like now is 80% confident, next is 60, and future is 30 or whatever, right? And I think one of the challenges with that is always people understand it's totally made up. Like the numbers never change often when folks do that, right? It's always next is 60% confident or something like that.
Right.
So this, I think, has enough data behind it, and I'm sure there's all sorts of things that can impact it, make it more or less accurate, but it has enough data behind it that I think you can, and also I like the color part at the bottom where people can say, all right, if I tell someone April 8th or whatever date, that's yellow, so I probably shouldn't. I should go for at least the light green. And then they know the risk they're taking on, right?
Right.
So I like that part of it where it gives enough data that you can let people kind of choose their own confidence and how they're going to, whether it's internal or external or sales, someone's probably making a decision based on when the next thing will be done, right?
Well, and what's fascinating, Joel, if someone starts pushing for a date, especially like with sales, you can say, well, look, if we only have to do 8 of the things, well, look, green moved up a week. And so I think what's interesting too is that the data changes as work progresses. And so as a team, continues to work, the dates can shift and we can actually update that in real time. But it kind of, it does make some things transparent about progress based. This is all based off of past performance, right? So past performance is never a guarantee of future, but it at least puts some context and some ideas around what's possible. And it can actually show you the trade-offs. It's like, if we insist on 10 items, this is where things land. But if those bottom 2 ones that were nice to haves drop, suddenly we're talking about, a different range of dates, a different discussion. And it's one of the things I've seen with this, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, when we're talking about dates, especially with stakeholders, it gets very emotional, right? It's a very charged discussion. You promised this, you said, and what I have found especially from a leadership position, being able to have a conversation around real data. Now, if it's made up, like Joel said, that's all, then this doesn't work. But if a developer on a let's say a Scrum team, if they're keeping their data in Jira up to date, or if they're keeping their data in Rally or whatever tool they're using, right? We love all the tools. They're all great. But let's say Jira, if they're using Jira, they're keeping their data up to date. We're using these plugins to pull this data out. We can, with some level of confidence, go to our stakeholders and say, based on what we know today, your ask of these next 8 items in our backlog, these are the dates we're talking about. How does this look? And to me, that's no longer emotional. It's data driven. We've run some simulations. We've got some ideas here. What do we need to do?
Yeah. And I would put, and hopefully if Dan ever listens to this or watches it, he'll give me a pat on the back. So I think the key thing you want to keep in mind here, right, is and Joe kind of was getting towards in the beginning, and I'm glad you said something when you're looking, you're like, yeah, it's always the same numbers, right? 60, 40, 20, whatever in the future. So the key thing with this is it doesn't stop here, right? This is supposed to be, it's what they call continuous forecasting. So just like, like a hurricane, right? They use that example in the classes. A hurricane, day 1, it could start, and this is its projected path, right? But on day 3, it could be, covering, half the East Coast of the United States, right? And if you just took it on day 1, people in Florida might be scared, but no one up in the Carolinas, they probably, wouldn't take cover or even think about it. But it's on a continuous basis. You want to keep updating that forecast because Ryan said, right, there are things that are going to impact that and change. There is no way to be like, hey, it's on this day, it's going to be this date, and boom, it's accurate. You have to continuously update it.
And I think back to those, what's the proper amount of friction for developers to make good decisions is them updating their Jira, or whether this can be tied to commits or, however you have it set up. They're getting instant feedback, which I love, because, I've battled through a lot with different teams of, someone waits 4 days to either say they're done with the task. In stand-ups, they're saying, I'm working on this, but you don't get the level of detail until you see the code. And then when they commit the code 4 days later, someone else says, oh, well, I actually had a totally different endpoint in mind or something like that, right? So this is something that gives developers a win. And I love gamification type stuff. It can be overdone, but we've seen the GitHub just made those 3D models, right? Have you guys seen those? Like the GitHub skylines?
No.
So I believe, and someone will fact check me on this, but I believe basically what they did is your activity on GitHub, they plotted out in a long rectangle, and then it made it 3D. So on days you were really active was like a skyscraper, and on days you were on vacation, hopefully were flat. And so people are actually 3D modeling their GitHub, and it's totally a gamification. How many green dots can you get in a row type stuff? And this to me seems like it could have that effect on developers too. Of you got done early. Oh, it just moved from 84% confident to 88% confident, or something like that.
Right. Yep. Well, and something else that's kind of fun. And this was not supposed to be a demo of Twig, but to Joel's point about if we're in a daily Scrum and things aren't moving, I mean, part of this whole simulation and calculation is item aging. So is there something that's been stuck in its current state for way too long? And are we hitting some risk threshold that it won't be done within some service level expectation? And so that becomes immediately transparent. So as a leader, I can look at this and not necessarily go and beat up the team. You don't want to do that, but I think a Scrum Master, a director of development, however you're set up, they could look at this and say, hey, this thing has been nailed to the board for 4 days. It hasn't moved. Do we need to swarm this? Do you need some help? Do you understand what we're doing here? I think the sooner we find those opportunities to ask those questions, the more stable, the path of the hurricane becomes, to use Richie's analogy, right? And this stuff, I have found this to just this data-driven approach. When we were all working together, if you would have shown this to me, I would have argued and thrown a fit and no, you can't just, but actually, looking at some of these things, it's like we can know sooner when problems are popping up and when we need to start talking to stakeholders sooner if we choose to look at these things. But it takes, a leadership team that's developed, that's, to Joel's point, what can we measure, right? A leadership team that can actually say, we're going to measure item aging. And when we're going to set a policy, right? If it's been stuck for more than 2 days, you've got to get a fellow developer to come and help you. Like we've got to, or no single set of eyes on things that are stuck. And as we do those, it makes it easier for them to make better decisions, right? Things don't get hidden, things don't become late. And it makes it super easy for a dev to say, hey, I need help, or hey, I need to do the right thing here, or hey, things aren't working out. The more environments that we can create like that, I think the fewer stakeholders are looking to blow us up, right?
Yeah. You know, you just made me think about too, was you get the classic thing where someone says, I can't get help because it's too complex. It'll take me too long to explain to someone else. And the net gain will be a loss because, 2 people working on it will slow me down. Yep. And that takes me back to, I know you for a long time were pushing the how small can you make the units of work. And I think that all ties together if you're not able to commit at least once a day, then you're probably taking on something that's too complex. It's a method that's going way too many lines of code, or there's all sorts of different strategies people have taken, right, to try to make chunks of work smaller. But this metrics, I think, can help drive some of that too with now I'm seeing the feedback, because you'll always have developers, and I've done it many times myself, where you just want to keep refactoring. And, 3 days later, you've found yourself so far down the hole, you're fixing the problems that you created.
It's funny, Joel, you just made me think of an experience I had while writing the book, right? It's serendipitous that the image, I did a PowerPoint slide to throw behind us at the last minute because we're not set up yet on the main podcast for 3 guests or 3 people, right? And I was looking over at the picture of the book while you were talking, and so Dawn Shannonfeld is just an amazing editor, right? She actually made Todd and I sound far smarter than we ever deserve in a book, right? And we were having a conversation about some aspect of Scrum. I don't remember what it was. And I used that line that you threw out, like it's too complex for me to explain it. It'll take longer for me to do that than to just write the chapter. And she was like, hold on a minute. First of all, you're being a condescending jerk. And she was right. And I immediately apologized. And secondly, and she might have said it a little nicer than that. So Dawn, I'm probably not giving her the right framing there. She's very kind. She was probably very graceful with me. I was being a condescending jerk. So those are my words. But secondly, she made a point that if you can't explain it to me, then you don't understand it. So the problem is not the person that you're trying to, you're the problem. Right? You don't understand it. If you can't explain it to the person and sit down and pair and get help, then that's an excellent reason to bring someone in, because you have the deficiency, not the other person. And I countless times I've had that mentoring opportunity with, first of all, someone had to tell me that when I was a dev. So I made that mistake. Right. But I think over the years, we've had great opportunities to have that conversation with other devs that, if you're going to throw me that line that it's too complex and it's easier for you to just sit here and be stuck, well, then you don't understand it. And so we need some help, right?
Yeah, Richie threw it out earlier. You have to be able to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And it's very uncomfortable to not understand something. And so I think that's something where, one of the fun things I like to do from time to time, I'm not allowed to write code. And Richie was one of the folks who really prevented me from writing code. But in all honesty, I've been away long enough. I shouldn't be writing production code. But it is a fun game for, the team to get on a Zoom call and watch me try to write code and then in real time almost heckle me. Because, some of the things that I don't know anymore is how to do Git commits and all the different shortcuts, right? And I think that really helps the team understand there's a lot I don't know. And so it's okay to say, hey, who's someone who really enjoys this and can help me? But it takes, I think, leadership being a bit foolish themselves sometimes to get people to open up.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I hope people are taking all this in the right sense. I really liked working with Joel because of that reason. Like he would get up in front of a whiteboard and take the first risk of drawing something that may not be right, and it would create an opportunity for another architect to walk up and say, "No, Joel, it kind of works like this." And I mean, if the leader's willing to be wrong, then why am I worried about being wrong too? I mean, it just sets the right tone, right? It makes it so easy for someone to just do the right thing, right? I can ask, oh, Joel just wrote the wrong architecture up there. I can ask for help when I'm confused about an API, and everybody's happy because at the end we end up with a great product. We're not trying to, but how many environments have we seen where it's just a gotcha game? It's like, oh, you were wrong. You're going to get punished. Oh, you're wrong. And okay. So you can go win that silly game, and I'll go find a company that wants to build great products, right?
Yeah, you just gave me a flashback to I think there was like 10 days in a row where every morning I came in and I raced. I had an entire whiteboard architecture, and every morning I raced it and started over.
Yeah.
And after 10 days, I was like, okay, I'm ready for people to tell me what else is wrong.
I think I remember seeing you do some of that where it was, nope, not ready yet. Nope, not. But I mean that's good stuff, right? It's I think we're supposed to come at this role with some humility. We're supposed to come at it with some grace, some forgiveness. We're supposed to help people out. And when we fail to do that, I think we create the teams we deserve, right? And so something I've always appreciated working with Joel and Richie both. They really want to create teams of people that are supportive, that want to get good things done. They're not trying to play the gotcha game. And so it's just always, it was even though I wasn't there that much.
he jokes, but he was there at least 50% of the time.
Yeah, at least 50%. But I mean, at
least physically,
right? But it does. You be careful. But it does create an environment where even people will follow the leaders around. Like, I mean, Joel and Richie, how many people? I mean, as you go on different adventures and visit other places to work, I mean, people stay with you, right?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Joel. Or do you want? I was just gonna say, like, oh, we're doing it again. We're doing it again. We're crossing the streams.
Tell them about our Slack group.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, so that looking back at it, right? So, like Joel mentioned, we met years ago at a company, right? And we were both engineers at the time, right? And since then, we've taken different paths, we've gone different routes in different areas of leadership in companies, and then the company that we ultimately came back to, right, and ended up, and we actually had a chance to do it kind of, I don't want to say our way, right, but it was like, okay, we had enough experience, we've been at enough companies where we just see things, just people who just don't understand what it takes to build good software, and instills that culture of fear as well, right? So having that opportunity with Joel, I think was that was absolutely one of the best times in my career, right? Like, I actually enjoyed coming to work, right? And there was many reasons because of that, right? It wasn't just because the job or the building was cool or whatever, right? It was the people and the culture that we built, and that does start from the leadership. So, and Joel was running that department at that time. So it did start with Joel and trickled down. But I think, what could attest to that is, how do you know if you built a great team or a great culture, right? And that's where I see, well, guess what? Everyone, like literally almost everyone, right, that we ended up hiring as a team. And hiring because I know that Joel and I were initially the first ones that were doing a bunch of interviews on trains and stuff. But as we grew over the years, right, and got a team of 30 plus folks, we still talk to them. Everyone still communicates, right? People have left, and and once again, people leave. We're happy for them. They have different opportunities, right? Sometimes they outgrow the organizational need. So like totally cool, totally fine. But that's kind of how you get a sense of that, like not accomplishment, but like that
about camaraderie.
I don't know what I'm looking for, but it's the sense that, like, hey, like, we really did build a great culture. I really believe that, and that proves that because most of the people that we hired, right, we're still in contact with, right, and not only that, but they've made relationships, between the the people they met while they were there. And, we did things, we have game nights and stuff like that. And we do have our Slack channel that we all communicate on and still keep in touch. And, we like to give each other crap every now and then. But, like, once again, right, like you can't, like that's what you're trying to build when you or instilling as a culture, right? Like there was no, I guarantee you any one of our engineers that we had, right? I guarantee you, right? Let's just say most, I won't say every because you can't say every, but I would guarantee you most engineers, if we asked them for something, right, a little bit extra or whatever, they would do it like that, right? And they wouldn't say, oh, well, I need more money, I need a raise to do that, right? It was just like they would do it because they know that we would do it for them, if that makes sense, right? Like I would do anything for those engineers, right? Like if it meant me staying up at night doing a late deployment, like whatever, I'll help as best I can debug, even if it's moral support, right? I want to show them that I'm there, right? And and that builds that trust. And I think that's just something that unfortunately I don't see, at least in my experience, I haven't witnessed at a lot of companies that I've been at.
Well, I mean, I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I mean, Joel is the one who sat me down and basically said, you need to run your own company. And it wasn't that he was trying to fire me, although I don't think he was trying to fire me. I think it was really just, he believed in what I was doing. He saw the things I was trying to do. And he was like, what's the plan that gets you there? And he sat me down and we figured out, I still needed to wrap some things up where we were working, but I mean, truly cared enough about me as a person and my career and not just this transactional in the job thing that Richie's talking about, right? It's like people would step up at that in that group because there's this mutual care about what we were doing for each other and with each other. And so, I mean, I've credited Joel many times with, get the book written, get the company formed, get out there and do the work because that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And of course so far so good. It's worked out. And I owe a lot to Joel for being that person that finally said, dude, go do this. Right. And how can I help make sure that your transition from being an employee to a business owner is smooth? And I think you guys have acted that way for those 30 engineers for whatever they needed. And that's why you have this following of people. It's just, it's that, it's not seeing leadership as transactional, right? There's actually an investment in people. And I think when we actually do that, we build these teams that can be successful, but we also build these groups of people that, even after we leave the job, I mean, we still chat. We're in the Goat Wranglers Slack group and we still have some fun and we play Phasmophobia every once in a while. And we, tease Richie a lot. And so, you know what I mean?
That's key.
Yeah. Well, I thank you both, first of all. But, I think really I've been fortunate enough, even before I really got professionally in software, of being able to see a group of people that had a bigger purpose, driving for something that was bigger than kind of the material things. And, at companies, I've worked in a bunch of different industries and we're together in financial. It's really hard for folks to get excited about financial industry type stuff, right? I mean, we weren't in high speed stock trading, right? So I think you can't control always company decisions on what people will work on, where the budget goes, which products do we keep alive, which ones do we retire, what do we launch, right? There's a lot of things you can't control. And, I'll throw salary in there as well, depending on company structure. Sometimes, managers or leaders want to give a raise, but they just can't because of company structure. And the thing you can control, though, is, really trying to better yourself and better everyone around you. And that's something that I think is really hard because if you haven't seen someone do it before, then you don't want to understand the sacrifice. And like, it's kind of like, I've been fortunate that some folks have followed me 2, 3, 4 companies now. And they were kind of that person that could be like, hey, I've been here before and it's worth it. Right. Like I did the hard work. I was uncomfortable. I, tried to think differently. And in the end, we created this group that, we're still all together to get today. And I honestly don't think that, anyone still talks to, everyone else because, it was like personality. And if we would have met in a bar, we would have all hung out, right? Like all the people have totally different personalities and traits, but we were united in that, like, how can we be better and how can we be better at what we do? And I just feel fortunate that I've been able to do it a couple times now. And every time it just kind of drives me to do it again, right? So looking forward to future stuff too.
Nice. Well, I'll tell you what, guys, we're hitting that time zone where people stop listening. And so it's probably a good spot to wrap this up. But definitely want to thank you guys for hopping on. Like I'm sure it's clear from people listening, got a ton of respect for Joel and the way that he runs companies. And of course, Richie is a good friend who I've certainly enjoyed being a peer with. And it's actually fun watching him as he continues to progress down the leadership path. Of course, being one of the leadership stewards at scrum.org, it's fun to think back about some of the lessons learned from Joel, and especially around people, and watching Richie grow through that. And I certainly bounce a lot of questions off them. And these are some of the people that have influenced me. And so it's just awesome to be able to chat with you guys about this stuff, and looking forward to the next time.
For sure.
So
for sure.
This is the point where if you guys have anything to promote, I'm not sure if you do or not, if there's anything you want to point people towards, any kind of shameless plug, you're more than welcome to do that.
I have a big one. I have a really important one. And it's comical. So unfortunately I haven't, like, I've taken down my blog. I haven't spoke at tech conferences in a couple of years, but I think Twitter is shadow keeping me at 310 followers. So I really just, obviously you've got a lot of listeners. If someone can get me to like 315, that'll be a personal record for me. So at Joel_Karr on Twitter, and let's see if I can get to 315 followers. That'll make my day.
All right, we got Joel Karr on Twitter. If we can get Joel bumped up, we can end the conspiracy theories of Twitter artificially deflating his follower count.
It's been like 5 years. Like 5 years, I've been steady between 308 and 312. So,
all right. Hopefully, a handful of you out there bump him up to that 315, 320, and he'll be happy. How about you, Richie Peters? What do you got?
I got nothing to promote.
You're good.
I'm just your average Joe.
All right.
I'm just the hype man. That's all.
He is the hype man.
I'm the hype man.
Richie needs no promotion. He promotes himself.
That's
exactly,
right.
Exactly.
Well, then I'll tell you what, we're going to wrap this one up, and just want to thank everybody for being out there, for listening. Check out the socials, hit that subscribe and like button so you know when we drop a new episode of Agile for Humans, Your Daily Scrum, Fixing Your Kanban, all sorts of stuff coming up, everybody. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you know when that happens. Check out some of the videos below. We've gone ahead and linked up some fascinating episodes about Scrum and Kanban that could be a help to you. Be sure to leave us some comments below. What do you like about the show? What don't you like? And what can we do better? I think that would be a fun way to wrap this one up. And so I'm Ryan Ripley. Joel Karr, Richie Peters have been our guests. And thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time.